Hi there, Taylor Pettis here, back with another digital discussion, although today's topic might seem more like an analog technology, the telephone. I'm chatting with Stevie Ray, a longtime columnist for the Business Journal. Welcome, Stevie. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
What do you want to know?
Well, we're going to talk a little bit about the telephone today.
Yeah.
If you want to give a quick intro.
Well, as you mentioned, I'm a nationally syndicated columnist for the Business Journal newspapers, and most of my time professionally is spent conducting corporate workshops and keynotes about communication skills and professional skills for the business world.
All right. So I'll call you a business expert for today.
Okay, that'll do it.
All right. So I know today's topic seems a little less digital, so I'll explain. We spend tons of time using digital strategies to attract and convert audiences. And while I'm a digital marketer who works for a digital agency, it's important to note that the phone still has value, and it does. We recognize this at 3 Deep. We have a contact center that supports many of our campaign efforts. And one of the reasons we wanted to chat with you today is you wrote an article a few years back how the phone is still very relevant to business and life. And let me pull it up here. It was emails, texting, replacing phone calls.
Yep.
Don't believe it. So tell us a little bit more about your opinion, and is it still relevant today, even though this was written, a year or two ago?
Well, actually, I wrote that, and then I wrote a follow-up to that not just a few months ago.
Oh, wow.
Because it's a perennial issue. And it's one that it's not going to be resolved because there is no resolution, but it's going to be a constantly moving target. And I've had clients recently, one in particular, actually call me to say, because when I do a workshop, it's to sharpen people's professional skills. So they don't usually call me and say, oh, we want your presentation number 3 or 4. They call me and say, here's what we have going on and what can you help us with. This client called and said, they are I don't want to get into what kind of company they are because that would skew it, but basically they deal with a lot of professional clients.
Yeah.
So not direct to customer type of thing. They have a lot of high level business to business clients. And the president said, as well as the regional manager, we've been having some issues with clients recently where they're not being served in the best way. So we get really high ratings, but the ones we don't get high ratings on are, of course, the primary concern. And the regional vice president said, I get the problem when it's kicked upstairs. So by then, it's not going to be an easy resolution. And I've been looking through these email threads, and they're going on for weeks and weeks about whatever issue it is. And I can see that a simple phone call on day 1 would have resolved the issue. But for some reason, my people are not making that phone call. They're continuing this email thread to try to solve the problem. Frankly, by the time it hits week 3 or 5, you're not going to make anybody happy. You might solve the problem, but they're still not going to be happy. So he said, can you come in and do a workshop to teach people how to get back on the phone and realize the reality is there are times when email and digital communication is preferred by both sides and it's better, and there are times when voice to voice is better. So we need to make an honest discussion about when that is. What was interesting to me is that at the end of the workshop, I don't use PowerPoint or anything like that, but in this particular case, they asked me to write a few things on the board for them to take notes. And what I wrote on the board was, on one side, text, advantages, disadvantages. On the other side, voice, advantages, disadvantages. And after the workshop, they rushed up there to write down everything I had posted up there. Now, most of that was common knowledge to my thinking. What surprised me was the light bulbs going off, going, oh, so when I use a voice, I can use inflection to make my point better, and there's less misunderstanding than when there's text. And what it made me realize is a lot of people think that because they can word text specifically, that it will take away all misunderstanding. And there is some truth to that, but the reality is you can word things perfectly. People are still going to misunderstand it because our brains are not wired to understand text very well. Our brains are neurologically wired to read meaning out of a voice. And to try to transfer one to the other is not that easy. So what happened because of that workshop was for me to realize, wow, people don't understand the realities of the two.
So voice inflection is kind of like the emoji of the previous generation. So, but
yeah, they're trying to copy it with an emoji. It ain't happening.
But yeah, and so emojis still don't communicate the points. But I really like your response, and it brought up a couple of thoughts for me. The first off is, with the telephone, there's a lot more elements of immediate response. We see that in our business a lot of times where consumers want information and they want their answers now. And, maybe as we turn more into a digital world where we're texting and we're sending emojis, part of this art of conversation might be lost. And some of what I'm talking about is what people might say, what our parents taught us, or what you learn in kindergarten, where it's lead with a compliment, or embrace small talk, ask questions, or listen as much as you talk. Can you expand a little bit on that and on what some of your opinions might be? Is the art of conversation still there, or is it still relevant today, even in the digital world?
Well, first of all, it's going to stay relevant because when you say we're in a digital world, we're in a digital world technologically, but we are not in a digital world neurologically. The human brain has not evolved one bit since the hunter-gatherer stage of human evolution. And that's something that modern brain scans are able to now reveal to us, is that we have the same wiring from when we were more or less tribal. And so a lot of our reactions to social situations and work situations are still hardwired from that era, which means, one, we respond best to small groups, not large ones. Tribes usually hovered around 30 people or so. It's been recently discovered that any working group larger than 30 people carries automatic dysfunction to it. It's not because there's anything wrong with those people, it's because the brain cannot handle more than 30 people at a time. When you're sitting in a large audience, say watching a movie or a lecture, that's okay because you're not interacting. You're sitting in the listening mode and all you're doing is being led by the facilitator. But interaction is a very delicate process. The digital world can't change that. And we're not going to evolve neurologically out of where we are now very fast, because we've been away from the hunter-gatherer stage as far as humans for only the tick of a clock and geologically, and we haven't changed a bit. So all of our wiring is set right back to that. So when you say the digital age, you have to be very careful about what you're actually trying to accomplish. If it's merely a passing of information, if I already have a client, we have a long-standing relationship, and they say, hey, can you make it Thursday at 2 instead of Wednesday at 3, I don't need to make a phone call. There's nothing important happening there. It's just information. When anything other than that is going on, a voice works better for a number of reasons. One, it provides, first of all, a greater opportunity for discovery. I have a policy, for instance, that was taught to me by a mentor. When I get an email from a prospective client, and this is a new person I haven't worked with yet, I never respond to their email with an email. I respond to all new emails with a phone call. First, I get surprised at the other end. When I call them, they say, you called! This is great! Nobody ever calls anymore. Oh, thanks for returning my email with a call. And I thought, wow, it's just hitting 7 digits, not that much work. But I also understand much more thoroughly what they're looking for. Saves so much time. When I track how many emails have gone back and forth to resolve an issue compared to a phone call, the phone call is much quicker. So a lot of people think digital is more expedient. It's not. It is in very specific cases. But the other thing that happens is they like me. You can't like a person over email. I don't care how many emojis you attach. It's not going to happen. They like me, so they want to work with me more. When I've done that, I've actually gotten additional work out of it. And third, it calms everybody. The most important thing for the human brain is to remain calm. And it's not easy with all the stuff going on these days. Emails and texts cannot calm each other. Humor is possible with text. I've seen it done. And there are some people who've written books that are very, like Dave Barry, really funny writer. It's a pretty specific skill. I'm a very humorous person because it's part of my career. And I can get there a little bit with text, not nearly as much as I can with a voice. So all of these qualities that are necessary for human communication are only possible through a voice. And that's just the way we're wired.
Well, it's great. I mean, you've definitely elaborated on what our opinion is here as far as, digital is still relevant. People, the first place they go a lot of times when they shop today or when they need information is Google, and they'll Google it. But it seems that oftentimes they need a little bit more of an immediate response. They need a little bit more of the personality that comes through only with a voice call, or better with a voice call than it does with text or with a landing page or with an email. And so I've really enjoyed this conversation today. It's helped really spread a lot of additional light on the topic. For a final thought, is there a last item you could share, or one final tip, or something that says why the telephone is still important in a world filled with websites and emails and texting and digital communication?
There's a quote by the famous actor George Burns. He said, "Acting is all about honesty. If you can fake that, you're good." And what that means is, in order to really connect with people, you have to reach the part of the brain that decides. The part of the brain that decides is influenced by the ears, not by the eyes. What we hear out of somebody's voice really has an impact on the decision making. When you send a text that is more than likely going to be shared with a large number of people, and they're going to say, okay, what do you think of person A versus person B? Then it's just left at that. When I've made a phone call, the person on the other end says, okay, I have to go back to committee now. And they almost always say this: I really like what you've said today, so I'm going to do my best to convince them to go with you. So if you're trying to decide between text and voice, think about, what do you want them to do as a result of this interaction? And if you want them to advocate for you and push for you, then you're going to need your voice to do it. If you're afraid of using your voice, start using it more. I was at a restaurant the other day with my wife. We looked over at the other table. There was a husband and wife and 4 kids, all at a restaurant table. Every one of them was texting something. Not one was looking up at anybody else at the table. When the servers came by and put the food down, they didn't even look up and thank the server. So what I do as a tip is increase your abilities at conversation by one practice technique. Turn every transactional relationship into a connected one. When you go to the store or the bank or the grocery store, anywhere, that's a transactional relationship. It's very quick and it's usually left that way. Thanks for coming by. Whenever I'm in one of those situations, I try to switch it to something that has more impact. I was at Target the other day buying a little pack of batteries. So I'm standing in the 10 items or less aisle behind everybody who's got 30 items in their basket. And the young lady at the checkout was clicking everybody as fast as she can. And she kept saying, you want a bag for this? You want a bag for this? You want a bag for this? Everybody's in and out, in and out. Got up to me, handed her my little pack of batteries. She went, boop, you want a bag for this? She's looking down and I said, no, but I will need help out to the car. She lost it. She went, it was like short-circuiting her brain that there was actual conversation going on. Then she laughed, went, oh, cut it out. Here you go. Everywhere I go, if it's going to be transactional, I try to command the situation and switch it around. That is practicing on a daily basis for when I'm actually on this with a client. Then I can do the same thing there. I get clients laughing, and laughter, frankly, is one of the most important means of influence. You can't get people laughing with a text. You laugh together, you create a relationship. So that's one tip I give. Do that on a daily basis with transactional relationships. Then when the rubber meets the road, then you're ready for it.
I love that tip, and it even kind of expands on what we were talking about before with the art of conversation, and it truly shows that you've mastered it, and thank you for sharing your expertise with us today. You proved to be an expert, and I loved it. So thank you so much for your time, and I really appreciate the conversation.
My pleasure.
All right. Thanks, Stevie.
Thanks.